Here we are. So, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this interview that we're having with Anu Reims. Before we start, like I always do, I'd like to go ahead and talk about what IWP is and who it is for. So, Indian Women Professionals is a group meant for Indian women helping other Indian women with career choices, mentorship, leadership, and entrepreneurship. We aim to influence people to think critically about their career and reaching their fullest potential. And in this talk, you will feel that as Anu instigates or inspires you to think critically about reaching your fullest potential. As they say, your network is your net worth, and you are the sum of the five people you spend time with the most. So, your network and the people you spend time with matters. It shapes your opinions, it shapes your ambitions, and it inevitably shapes your future. Think of these events when we speak to these remarkable women as your masterclass in bravery, leadership, and resilience. Free to attend, priceless in value. Okay, so it is like a personal coaching class from these folks who have mastered their specific areas. Listening to these interviews is like receiving a personal coaching session from some of the most skilled, courageous, and inspiring women in the world. And remember, they're all Indian women, so we can identify with them. And additionally, you get to ask questions, unlike most podcasts. And today we are going to talk to Anu Reims. Anu is the founder of Sustainable Investment Partners LLC, an investor with nearly 2 decades of experience, having held senior roles at Liberty Mutual Investments, BNP Paribas, and other global institutions. Anu empowers women and intentional wealth builders to enter financial conversations with clarity and confidence through her speaking engagements. Welcome, Anu. Thank you for being here. And I want to say again, for those who were not on the call earlier, Anu and I met purely through the power of the network. We have never met each other in person, but we've had more conversations than I could have had with many of my own personal friends. Anu and I guess we talked a lot
Yeah,
over
we do.
the last few months.
We
And
do.
I would say that every conversation has been very motivating and inspiring. So welcome, Anu.
No, thank you. Thank you, Priya. Thank you for doing this. Thank you to everyone on the call today. It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon. Before I start off, I just want to say that anything I say during this conversation, it's not investment advice. It's purely educational. If you act on any advice, not I will not be giving any advice, but if you act on anything that I say and if there are consequences, I am not liable. And with that out of the way,
Yes, that's important and it's on record. So
yes,
that's
it's
out of
on
the way.
record.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
So yeah, so I completely agree with Priya. Priya and I, we don't know how exactly we met. We know that we met on Facebook. Priya has this wonderful Indian Women Professionals group going on. Maybe I stumbled on the group. Maybe it was like, something on land notes that she put out there. I don't know where I found, like we found each other. But the conversations have been really great, really eye-opening because we sit on different, we are both in the whole investing space, but in different spaces, different ecosystems. And it's always great to exchange information and to exchange knowledge with those investors in the ecosystem, but especially women investors. It makes it personal.
yes, it does
And
make it
Indian
very
women
personal.
investors.
Yes, yes. And
Yeah.
I truly, truly believe that more women need to understand investing rather than, invest in assets that are not appreciating. Invest in appreciating assets
Yeah.
rather than invest in lipstick and foundation.
Yeah.
Invest in things that actually, not that lipstick and foundation, that I have anything against lipstick and foundation, but, invest in appreciating assets, really, right? So before we go ahead, or let's dig right in. Anu, tell us about your background, upbringing, schooling, collegiate education. Where do you come from, and how do you identify with all of us?
Okay. So I like that I'm Indian. I'm from Kerala. When my schooling, primary schooling was in Zambia and South Africa. And when I was in middle school, which is sixth grade, I came back to India. My both my parents were they were in the Department of Collegiate Education in the government colleges in Kerala. Dad was a physics prof, mom English, and my dad's still in South Africa right now. He stayed on back in South Africa. My mom's in India, and I went to school in Trichur in Kerala, and I did my engineering from there. Out of school, I got a job in Bangalore with Lucent Technologies, which was kind of like, Bell Labs, Lucent Technologies, that whole conglomerate. And this was in 1998. 2000, I came to the US. There was this website called monster.com. All our friends put, our resumes, and then we got a call. And I got a job with Hughes Network Systems based in Maryland. So I came in to do satellite communications. So I did 3G back in India, 3G wireless on the engineering side. And they wanted someone to do it on the satellite side, but they didn't have anyone in 3G at that time, because at that time, the talent, there was a shortage of talent, especially in like telecommunications and software and all the good stuff. Came to Maryland, was there for 2.5 years, came here, got married, and I moved to Boston. My husband was in Boston, moved to Boston, and I did my MBA from Babson College. When I started out, I thought I was going to be an entrepreneur. So Babson's like really well known for entrepreneurship. I joined their full-time MBA program. And I came out once I graduated, I joined a startup hedge fund. That's how I got started in the business. So that's my background. It's how do I relate to everyone? I kind of feel like, so people in our generation, so folks back, I believe it was in the 1990s after Rajiv Gandhi that the whole, internet era opened up in India, right? And during that time, a lot of folks moved from India to the US. And I am part of that, that flow that happened, in the 1990s and early 2000s. Um, right now, I kind of feel like as time goes, as time, like our identities shift. We start off as engineers, doctors, whoever we are. We take on leadership roles in organizations. And then we hit midlife, and then we turn back and look at how intentional was I with my life? Where did I end up? Am I happy with what I did? Am I not happy with what I did? What can I improve? So I kind of feel like for all of us, it's a mix of it's a sum total of everything that we have done all our lives, knowingly or unknowingly, right? The stories that we were fed when we were kids, the stories that we grew up hearing, whether we were empowered or not when we were kids. So all that kind of like translates into what I do right now, which is money. And I'll just say two quick things about my career. I started out at the startup hedge fund. It was one of the best experiences that I could have had, because I started in 2006, 2005, end of 2005, 2006. That was before the global financial crisis. And being a startup hedge fund, it's pretty much, um, it's like make it, you need to make it. And I was the long short technology analyst. And so, and there's something, it's kind of like trade school where you learn from the person who, so I had someone with 20 years of experience, 25 years of experience, essentially teaching me and the other staff, like, how do you do this stuff? You can learn all this in school, but to have that lived experience of someone who actually went through business cycles, uh, because this is a lonely job. When your investments go up, you pat yourself in the back. Yeah, maybe you get some money, you're happy. but it's not where you have a team and bonding. So that's how this job is different from others. It's intensely lonely, and it's your decisions, and whether you made a good decision or not. And the beauty of finance is it doesn't matter if you are white, brown, black, tall, short, thin, fat. The market tells you whether you got it or not. So, yeah, I'll stop at that.
That is true. That is true. And I love the fact that you said that, it's a sum of all your decisions across your life, right? That kind of, inspires you and motivates you into doing the next thing, and you kind of judge yourself based on what you have done in the past. And interestingly enough, a slight bifurcation here. I was speaking to someone just earlier today, and she said how having one degree is out of fashion now. You need multiple degrees. And so you have to explore your pluralities and explore the different things that you know in order to really identify what your personality is. And the reason I'm saying this is because the subject matter what we're talking about here, right? Getting into finance, just because you're an engineer or just because you are in some other kind of business, it does not mean that you shouldn't learn about finance, right?
Yep.
It's you
Yep.
have to explore those pluralities, and because those come up all the time in your life.
Yeah.
They're applicable every time.
So the one thing about finance I'd say is you need to jump in before knowing what you're doing. If you're not in the system, if you're not in the ecosystem. So, I mean, if you think about, I hear what you're saying. It's not fashionable to just have one degree. True. And when I came to the US, I remember being so adamant about I have to do something. I cannot just have an engineering degree. Something more needs to be done. Like,
Yeah.
so and it comes with, like, the nurturing that you've had as a child. And that's essentially because that's how you judge yourself when you are a youngster, right? Like, did I do XYZ? So that's one thing you do. Um, Finance is interesting because, like, we can think about it in multiple ways. We can think about how men invest. We can think about how women invest. People in different professions, how they invest. And the thing is, finance is kind of like it's a cornerstone of everything that happens in life. However, it's something that's pretty opaque. Like, all of us are really good at making money, like going to work for someone, earning money, and that money comes into a bank account. We have that figured out, and our entire focus is on how do I network for my next opportunity? How do I make sure that when I'm in, like, my career space, I come out as a thoughtful leader? Like, you are like, so like career coaching, you are like so obsessed with all that. But what happens is, in the background, what happens to the wealth that you've accumulated? Like, how does it sit in a bank account? Because it takes you, like, you need to take the effort to think about it. Think about it. If money's in the bank account, there's nothing wrong with it, right? It will sit there.
We
I
were
mean,
trained to
it
let
will
it
sit
sit
there.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, it will sit there.
Yeah.
It's like you're going to see your monthly statements and you'll be like, I need to keep working harder. So I love this book, Animal Farm, which I'm sure almost everyone has read. And there, this boxer, the horse who does, like, everything right. So, like, put your head down, work hard, do the right things. And I kind of feel like we have been trained to do that. Like, let's work. But then, how about thinking about what's the other part of my life? Like, what's more to life than this? Because earning is what we were trained to do from the time we got into the schooling system. I need to get out of this and do a job that brings me a lot of income. So, yeah, I'd say that I'd say that with finance, it takes, you need to step into it without fully knowing what it is, and you need to make mistakes. And that fear might keep people away from it, saying, hey, listen, I don't know what it is. So let me not do it, because cash in the bank is something you can see, versus if you put it out there and if it goes down, it's going to be tough. And women are a lot harder on themselves uh, than men, because based on what I've seen, women essentially feel like, and again, this is not statistically significant, it's based on what I have seen in my life. Women need to understand and trust that they are going to have a good outcome before they step into a situation. And um, and I actually would say um, it's it's one of those things where you kind of like need to go, you don't need to go all in. Take small steps and make sure that you get there over time. But the important thing is to take small steps early on in life so that you educate yourself.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
It's like they say, right? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago.
yeah,
The second best time is today.
is today.
So if you
Exactly.
didn't plant a tree 20 years ago, guess what? It doesn't matter how old you are, you still
Yeah,
need to plant it today,
yeah,
right? Because
true.
there is still going to be a tomorrow.
Yeah, there is.
There is
And
going to be a tomorrow.
I'll just give you my background. Like, so I was an institutional investor. So I worked in really large organizations, and it's like, those are like having having those roles essentially, you kind of like see the world in a different way, because the thing is, when you're someone who can write checks, everyone's your friend. You see every single opportunity set out there, because people want to show you, like, regardless, because you always could be a prospect down the line, right? Because people can change jobs, they can go different places. So you literally get to see what's the best out there in the world. And I will tell you that intellectually, my focus was like completely on the job. But like our personal finances, the thing is, since I know how to do it, I wouldn't trust another person with my money.
Yeah.
And so that that was like one thing for me. Like, it's very hard for me to trust someone else because I know what to do.
Yeah.
And um and so I kind of found that, what, like, our even our personal finances, it took a back seat. Like, we do something, but now when I look at our personal finances, I'm like, man, this is such a shame. I'm in the business, and we should have done a better job for ourselves. And I'm kicking myself for not, like, trusting someone else. But, like, you know what, I don't know if I can do it even now. Like, suppose it, like, obviously I'm in the business now, so I do it for myself. But when I was on the institutional side, just managing money for large portfolios, personal finance was not front and center for me. It was kind of like, yeah, that's something that I'll get to later. But it matters. It really matters, because the one thing I'll say is, we all have expectations of our job and when we retire. In the US, the average retirement age is 62, and by, like, mid 50s, people start retiring for reasons they never thought they would have to. It could be health reasons, it could be issues around, like, like aging parents, like a host of reasons. People start retiring early, and then suddenly they are like, okay, our focus was on whatever we it was on the earning side. It wasn't on, okay, after I retire, I need to live for another 50 years.
Yeah.
What do I do?
Yes.
So, yeah,
Lifelong vacation.
lifelong vacation. Exactly. So I think you might have asked a different question and I went off on a spiel. So please
That's
feel free
okay,
to.
because you gave me something else to ask about. You gave me something else to ask about, and that is, you mentioned, very interestingly, you mentioned that you were an institutional investor and you were
Yep.
managing funds. And but at the personal side, even today you feel like, man, I didn't do a good job of what I should have
Yeah.
done. Now, and that leads me to a thought that when you are you have the cover of an institution, you are
Yep.
working for an institution, they have your back, right? You have the framework that they have already set up. So, even though you're bound by those rules and you know that you can't take a risk with other people's money, yet you have the mental backing that they are giving you, that yes, this is Fidelity or this is Liberty Mutual or whoever it is. So you have
Uh-huh.
that mental backup that yes, I'm doing it for them, and hence, you know, but at the same time, when you're doing it for yourself, um, somehow those frameworks disappear,
Yeah.
and somehow all the risk comes into the picture. Like, this
Mm.
is my money, this is no longer someone else's money, this is my
Mm-hmm.
money. And how
Mm-hmm.
do I take, like, okay, I have so much in my bank account, and like, if I invest $3,000 in this fund or in this stock, what if I lose it all?
Yeah.
And then suddenly it becomes something that's worth, you don't look at the numbers the same way,
No.
right? Suddenly the numbers are much bigger. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you address that issue, the fact that, when it comes when it and even those of us who are not institutional investors and who have not, who have just basically put funds into 401ks and not really given it a second thought, how do you take that fear away from investing? That's
Mm.
It goes straight to the point of what we were going to talk about.
So I'll tell you, like, so the week before making the recommendation to the investment, to the entire investment committee, that night I really couldn't sleep because for the 401k, because I was kind of like, I am going to, and there was a whole host of reasons why I was responsible for that decision. There was a major restructuring. My entire team was let go. I was the only one remaining who had equity experience. And then there was like an external advisor helping us out with a whole host of things. But at the end of the day, that decision point of like, this is me recommending it with, so that was there. And I was kind of like, I am going to take this decision for a gazillion folks, and I pray that this is the right decision. That was scary, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And on institutional investing, the one thing I will say is I did not have the frameworks that like a Fidelity or a Charles Schwab would have. So Liberty Mutual, so the way to think about it is when you put when you buy an insurance policy, you give money on a monthly basis. In the back end, that money gets invested, and the returns of that would be used to make payouts when you
Yeah,
need have a claim.
yeah, yeah.
So it was not personal at all. It was like very strictly institutional. But I have worked in other places where, like, I was part of the group that created the mutual funds. Like, I would be picking stocks for the mutual funds. So personal money versus doing it for someone else. So the one thing I would say is different people have different launch pads at which they can start investing. So, for instance, you might want to see $100,000 in your bank account every single night, and someone else might want to see $1 million in their bank account because that, for some reason, that's the amount of money that's hard coded into you for some reason that you and I don't know. So there was this person whom I knew. She needed to have a lot of cash saved up. Why? Because she wasn't sure about her relationship. What if she had to buy another house with her kids? I need to have money for the down payment. I don't want to take on a huge mortgage, so I'm going to keep that aside. So everyone has different reasons. And the one thing I say is don't fight with yourself. Don't fight with yourself, but understand what that dollar amount is for you. So if you're sitting on a gazillion, a lot of cash, know, you should be able to say, okay, these are the risks in my life. I'm worried about my parents. Okay, I might have to give them $50,000. Like, that's the money I've set aside for their health care. I might have like a situation where I need to help someone out. College education. Okay, I've got like, I don't know, 200, 300K set aside for my kids. So put some list out your fears, put a dollar value on those fears, add it up. Obviously, we can't prepare for everything, but see what's most close to your heart, and then start thinking about yourself and think about your long term investing. Because the biggest thing is we need to acknowledge the fact that we have fears in us, and we need to acknowledge the fact that there's a dollar sign attached to each of those fears. And once you,
Interesting.
yeah, and once you can nail that down, what you get is freedom. You get freedom to invest, because then you give yourself the reason a lot of people don't invest, it's because you haven't given yourself the permission to invest. And when you acknowledge the fact that you have fears, that and you can, like, quantify what those fears are, you'll be able to invest. And it's about you looking into the mirror as opposed to getting educated on a gazillion things. That's not what it is. It's you acknowledging who you are and what you're scared of.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point actually. And you also said the magic word education,
Yeah.
which I want to pivot off of that, right? And
Hmm.
Anu, you and I, we've had many conversations, and we've talked about the word education and how it's
Yeah.
essentially like a bad word,
It
right?
is.
So, and we talked about what is the opposite of education and how we can. So to me, I believe that, or let's start with this. Tell me why you don't like the word education.
Okay, so I meet a lot of folks who say, "Oh, I know, I really love what you do. You know what? I really don't know anything about investing. So I need you to educate me." And I'm like, "You've got a college degree, you've got a bank account, you're educated." Like, there's this whole narrative that, yes, you need to know something about everything, okay? Like, there's like a base layer that you need to know. But um, education, the fact that people saying, I don't know what the markets are, I don't know what risk is, and hence I need to be educated, at which point I'm going to jump off and then start investing. It's essentially become an excuse, because every time we don't do something, and then there's this whole narrative of, oh, women need more education and we are going to educate the women. I'm like, no, that's like totally wrong. I kind of feel like it's in you. And I don't know who came up with that narrative, but it's such a beautiful narrative for people to sit back and say, oh, it's just that we don't have the information to kind of like do what's necessary. So that kind of like drives it makes me a little annoyed. And I always tell folks, I'm not going to educate you. That's not something you need. If you can open a bank account, you can open a brokerage account. Like, yes, I'll be here to kind of like guide you along the way. But if you need like a 1 year session, no, that's not happening, because that's not what you need. And I love the word that you use, Priya, which is like wealth marketing. Do you want to say a few words about it since it's yours?
Yeah, I would say that wealth needs to be made sexy,
Yeah. Okay.
right? Yeah, because I think where does our attention go? Our attention goes into the things that are marketed to us.
Yeah.
And I
Yes.
think, and I hope I'm hoping to everyone who's going to watch this, everyone who's online right now, and everyone who's going to watch this later, that they understand that wealth is very sexy, and it is, the independence and the freedom, and whatever Anu's talking about here is, how to feel that, satisfaction of feeling wealthy.
Yeah.
And it's really about marketing wealth, to market to people that it's it's important,
Yeah.
and that there's a sense of freedom, and there's a, happiness that comes with the feeling of being wealthy,
Yeah. No.
right? And again, we can go into the definitions of wealth and all of that, but we won't go there right now. Yeah.
And this is something one of my friends kind of like told mentioned, and I so agree with it. She said, when a woman earns money um, and brings it to the family, she says it's our money. It's very hard for her to say it's my money, I earned it, like, that, like, so. And I was kind of, and why is that? Is it like, is it that earnings that a woman brings in, does it become community property overnight? I'm not saying that's always the case. I know like specific families where like, stay-at-home mom, the guy earns and he comes in and actually she runs the household with the money. Like, like there are situations where that's there. But in a lot of cases where I've seen, it's mostly like, it's our money, it's our wealth, it's our future. It's not my money. So even if you're unmarried, like, you come in, like, do you think your family has some kind of a stake in what you make? So those are like narratives that we need to think about. And maybe it's a generational narrative depending on when you grew up. But um, to your point, yes, wealth is something that can cause a lot of happiness. It's kind of like, uh, it's it's a more pleasant thing being unhappy when being rich versus being unhappy not having wealth. Which one do you prefer? Like, think about it that way,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
at the end of the day, like, you'll be unhappy no matter what sometime in
yeah,
your life. So do you
yeah.
want to be rich and sad, or do you want to be not
Poor and
wealthy and
sad.
sad? Yeah,
Yeah,
decide
yeah.
that.
And money does solve a lot of problems,
It
right?
does.
Wealth does
Yeah.
solve a lot of problems. There's no romanticizing poverty.
No,
You have
no.
to be wealthy, right?
Yeah,
And
you have
and
to
you
make.
have to take control of your wealth.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you know what, Priya, if it's okay with you, I just made like a couple of like
Yes,
slides that I can go through because I
absolutely.
feel like, and I'd like to, one of the things is whenever we have talks, typically people can take away one or remember one or two things at the most. Like that's the only thing they're going to remember. So I want to leave everyone with one or two takeaways that from the session of ours. Okay. So do you think I'll be
Yeah,
able
you
to
can share. You
share?
can go ahead and share. It's ready for sharing.
Okay. Okay, can you see my slide here?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let me, all right. So this is what we spoke of, know your financial psychology. All of us, like, we go through different stages. Initially, we are all taught to make money, to educate ourselves, to get a job, to earn money. We are taught to do that. But then once we have the money, then, and when we think about investing, you kind of like fall into three buckets, so to speak. Initially, when you start out, you typically have do-it-yourself investing. Okay, you've got accounts all over the place. You're not sure what everything is for, but you have something going on. And the biggest thing is you are afraid of a market drop. The one question is like, I have a lot of friends, like, the moment the markets crash, they're like, did you lose money? I'm like, yeah. So, like, and the one thing you need to think about when you think of human psychology is if you give me $100,000 and if it grows to $300,000 and the markets tank and it goes to $200,000, that the client is going to be sad. Versus if you have a client who gives me $100,000 and it grows slowly to $200,000, and let's say over a 3 to 5 year time frame that happens, you're going to have a client whose experience is a lot better. So the human psychology is what you do is you look at your biggest account and say that's your net worth, and anything below that is a drop. Like that's something to keep in mind. So that's something you need to know about yourself. Like 1 million going to 5 million to 3 million will cause you deep heart attack, like, deep angst. If it's, but the same thing, if that one goes to 3, you'll be a happy camper if there's no major drawdown involved. So we are intentionally like, we are wired for risk aversion. Once you get over that fear of losing it phase, you start thinking about asset allocation. Now, as an prior institutional investor, I will tell you that we did a ton of studies. Essentially, at the end of the day, asset allocation explains 80% of long-term returns. Because think about it, you're not going to have all your money in one stock. You're not going to have all your money in the stock market. You're going to have it. like you're going to have some real estate, you're going to have some stocks, you're going to have some bonds, you're going to have a mix. That mix in the long run determines 80% of your outcomes as opposed to any one, you know, it's possible that you are part of a startup company, you get a ton of shares and you decide not to sell it. That one thing could be a big portion of your wealth. What that does will impact what you do. So again, but that's asset allocation. It's like the concentration in what kind of asset classes. And then the last thing is confidence and expansion. Once you start getting familiar with asset allocation and once you understand the methodology behind the madness, you are kind of like, you are okay with multi-year capital. You start thinking in terms of, okay, I'm going to leave this in for 5 to 10 years. I know there might be a drawdown, but I'm okay with it. This is one big takeaway I'd like for you to have for yourself, for your kids, whatnot. There are two decisions that we need to take when we are, when we invest money for our families and for ourselves. One is the kind of accounts we need to open, and two is what to put inside those accounts. Those are two separate decisions. What happens is the whole conversation of IRA, Roth IRA, brokerage 529, by the time people understand all this and like open up the accounts, they are 40 years old, you know? So the one thing I say is as soon as you start your career, like, just open these accounts. You will use it. Just go ahead and open these accounts and start putting some money into it, even if you don't know what it's for. Okay. Just open it because you need it. And if you have kids who are like entering the workforce, make them do it because in the long run, it will benefit them. And the other thing is when you put money into like accounts like IRA, Roth IRA, like tax advantaged, make sure that it stays invested. Because typically when you put money into tax advantaged accounts, it needs to stay there for a couple of decades. Usually it does. Which means like, even if you or I are worried about a stock market crash next month or next year, if we put some money in for our, let's say, our kids' Roth IRA, do you think it's going to be okay 60 years from now? Yes, right? So that's the long term. Do you think the stock market's going to be up 60 years from now from where it is right now? I think the answer is going to be a resounding yes. So that time in the market matters a lot. So the younger you are, even if you don't understand what these accounts are, go ahead and open them. That's the first thing. The second thing is, pardon, Priya, you're muted. I don't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, okay. Sorry. My point was that if you are in the US, then these accounts are what you would open, and if you're not in the US, then
Uh,
there should be equivalent accounts in whichever country you're at, and it's just a matter of making sure that you have the equivalent accounts opened, which is usually for free, right?
yeah, mostly all of these. I mean, there might be like minimums, like 529. Like if I think if you go to like, there might be a minimum you need to put in, like $1,000 or something. 401, no, 401k, it's usually employer based. IRA, Roth IRA, usually these accounts are all free and not usually, these accounts are free from what I've seen, and you can put as little money as you can. And the other thing is, if you've got young kids, even if they are doing like, they don't need a W-2 job, even if they are doing chores around the house, or even if they are doing like a part-time job, they can start a Roth IRA. You can put money into you can start a Roth IRA for your kids and put money, like even $1,000 now might end up 10,000 a couple of decades down the line. So do those things early on because those are like small decisions. Honestly, it doesn't like trivial small decisions that can compound significantly over time. That's what those kinds of decisions are. So like it's like low hanging fruit. Just it's like check the box, do it, and just move on. Don't think about it. And keep contributing. Like ask the kids to keep contributing whenever they have like extra pocket change. But the rule is like you need to work, you need to earn. It has to come from, but you don't need a W-9, W-2 for that. And then, there's always this think of, okay, there are a bunch of, like, now we talked about the account part. So keep that aside. Now think of all the money that you have into one lump, okay? Like, forget the fact that it's in like different kinds of accounts. Just for the sake, just for the sake of simplicity, think about all the money that you have, and this is a $10 million account, and it's a fictitious sample allocation that I've put out there. And where I got this was this a group called Tiger 21, and it's a private membership community. And it is Tiger 21 consists of people who have more than $10 million of investable capital. They are usually entrepreneurs, but they want to meet like-minded people. And so it's kind of like a club for such folks. Tiger 21 does asset allocation surveys on what what is it that their members are invested in. And so this is an average of all of that. So what you can see over here is um, it's an allocation of someone who has 10 million or more. How have they invested their money? You can see, okay, they've got 9% cash, they've got 23% public equities, and this can change over time. But net, um, my point is, you need to create a North Star for you based on your age and your risk factor. And this asset allocation is definitely not something of a retiree, for instance. This is the asset allocation of someone who has a lot of wealth and who's still in the accumulation stages, okay? So based on your age and your risk factors, like I mentioned, like some people might need $1 million in their bank account to sleep at night. Some might need $100,000. Based on your risk factors and your age, you need to create a North Star so that it's a goal that you're working towards. This goal can change over time, but you need to have a goal to say, okay, this is how I want things to be broken down. And the way you do that is you can either educate yourself or you can work with a professional advisor and ask them for an asset allocation target for you. That's something you can do. Ultimately, what we all want is we want to have a good life and we want to retire on time. Now, this, I can't even overstate how important this slide is. Sequence of returns risk is a big risk that all of us should think about. It's like, that the markets always go up, because if you think about someone's investments, it can be in CDs, it can be in stocks, it can be in bonds, and stocks are the portion that actually goes up. And you can have real estate, private equity, whatever, depending upon how wealthy you are. But there's something called sequence of returns risk, which is, if you if you were 65 when in 2008, if you were 65 in the period 1968 to 1974, if you were 65 and if you retired into 2000, the dot-com crash, what happens is, think about it. Suppose you've got a $5 million portfolio or $10 million portfolio and then you go in saying, hey, I feel really good, and it's all invested in the NASDAQ, uh, and it goes down 80%. And if you need to pull money out of that for your yearly needs, your retirement would be permanently impaired. That is the sequence of returns risk. It's the risk that during the first decade of your retirement, you face a stock market collapse. So that's like, of all the risks, that's like one of the key risks that you need to think about. Obviously, and what happens is when the markets go down, people get afraid and they sell everything and then they are locked in, right? So what you need is, if the markets are to crash when you in the first decade of your retirement, you need to have a way for you not to have to touch the volatile portion of your allocation. And that's called the 3-6-12 strategy. It's like really simple. It's like, when you retire, make sure that you have. First of all, you need to know how much you need to, on a yearly basis. Do you need $100,000? Do you need a $200,000? Like, how much money do you need to pull every year to create your retirement salary? That's, it's your retirement salary, right? What do you want your retirement salary to be? And how do you create that with this big blob of assets that you have? 3 years, Priya, you're muted.
Sorry. Before we go ahead, Anu, I know that the moment that you say, you need to know what you want on an annual basis,
Yes.
at that point, people are going to be like, oh, I don't know. I don't know what I need. Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
So I'm going to suggest
Okay.
that that they put out a number, just
Yeah.
maybe equivalent to their salary, right? Having some
Usually,
number is better than not having any number at all.
usually 70% of your spend, like what you do is you take all your credit card bills and you put it into, there's like a bunch of like tools out there um, where it can track your expenses and tell you what buckets the expenses go into. So
Yeah,
what
yeah,
you do is look at your expenses over the last year, okay? An easy way to do it is take 70% of that. That's what you're going to be spending in retirement.
yeah. So I'm
70,
going to suggest we even shorten that even further, just because I know that people won't do that. So I'm going
yeah.
to say even that, like, just take 70% of your salary. What do you say to that?
Take seven, like you need to start somewhere. So
Yeah,
if you're saying like, um, the thing is like, let's say someone makes, I don't know, $500,000. Just put it out there. Someone makes $500,000. 70% of that is a lot of money. Maybe they make $500,000 and they save 300. We don't know, right? So
yeah,
that's the reason why you need to know what your spend is. So typically, if if you're in a situation where whatever you bring in is spent, yep, take your salary and say that's what I need to recreate. But if you like strongly save money, you really need to know what you spend, because that's that. And the thing is, like, that information is there in your credit card bills, right? It's there in your credit. And the thing is, typically, people in their 40s and 50s have kids. Once the kids graduate and move out, your retirement needs would be just your, whatever you need to spend for yourself. But I hear you, Priya. It's like one additional step that people need to do to understand how much they need to save. And if someone's not willing to do that, yes, take your salary. And if you're spending all of it, like, it's usually 70%. That's what the studies say. 70% of your, you should plan to recreate 70% of your spend.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. Just a number to put out there just to get them
yeah.
started. Yeah,
And
yeah.
so
Sorry,
then,
go ahead.
no, and then you have this, let's say you decide, okay, $100,000 is what I need. You'll have $300,000 in cash, 600. And when I say cash, I mean short-term T-bills, everything, okay? Not just cash sitting in your savings account. 3 years of like short-term instruments, 6 years in bonds, and 12 years in stocks. That's kind of like, so 300,000 in cash equivalents, $600,000 in bonds, and $1.2 million in stocks or private equity or whatever it is, like growth instruments. That's, and what happens is, suppose you retire and the stock market crashes 50%. What you start withdrawing from that cash account. Suppose you are retired and the stock market goes up 20, 30%. You trim your stock market and take money from that to fund your retirement. So this is a very simple thing that I'm putting out there. So if someone's like starting saying, I have no idea as to what to do, think about 3 6 12. It's an ultra conservative strategy. It's not for everyone, but if you're starting with nothing, it's something that you can use. And again, this is not a recommendation in any way. This is just something, it's just a toolkit that people can take to say, this is how I need to think about my future, and this is how much I need to save for the future. And the last thing is, like, there's this thing of withdrawal rate. Withdrawal rate is like, if you have $1 million, 3% of that, 3% of that is what, given the past history of 100 years, 3% of that is what you can withdraw on an annualized basis and not have money run out. Like it can be anywhere between 3 to 4.5%, depending on how lucky you get with the markets, but typically that's the range. So $1 million means you can take between 30 and $40,000 out of that. So decide how much you want. So if you're someone who needs like $200,000 every year, you need like a $6-7 million portfolio. That's what you need, provided all this is met. So that's kind of like it in a nutshell. I'm going to stop. So the two things I want everyone to take away. Number one, open the damn accounts, please. Like as soon as you can, even if, and then the second one is 3612. Like have a North Star and use 3612 as you think about your retirement planning.
So, really quick, Anu, I know we're almost out of time, but I just wanted you to bring that up again just for a second.
Which one?
Uh, the slide with the allocation.
Okay, just a sec. Okay.
Yeah, this one. So I think we didn't spend too much time here, but basically, what you're trying to say is that this is sort of the format in which these multimillionaires
Allocate money.
allocate their funds, right? And there was something very interesting that you told me when we discussed this, and you mentioned that you start with the one that you're most comfortable with. You said, Priya, you invest in real estate, so you start, allocating approximately this percentage. The first bucket that you put in is the one that you're most comfortable with.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it goes back to don't fight against yourself, right? So what you see with people is, if you're someone from India, if you're like Asian, if you're from the Middle East, people have um, people like real estate because they can touch it, feel it. They like precious metals because that's something they are used to. So depending on your background and your heritage, there are certain allocations that come naturally to you. It might be so easy for someone to say, okay, I'm going to have a rental property, but that person might like fight tooth and nail before investing $1 in the stock market because that's not something they are familiar with, right? So don't fight against yourself. Just make sure that you're investing in something and it has to be prudent. It needs to create a positive rate of return because you cannot change yourself. You come with the bundle of fears that you have, and you have to make this thing work somehow. So, yes, start off with something that you have safety with. For a lot of people, bonds or fixed income, it's like, it's kind of like they understand it because it's like you're getting an interest on it. Real estate, so what you do, Priya, would be like, so you're a land investor. So for instance, if you buy 100 acres in Alaska, that would go in the real estate pool. And then any of the private notes that you create would go in the private asset pool. So build what you're comfortable with, but know that you always need liquidity. So the thing is, when you think about private assets and real estate, the beauty is it doesn't get marked to market on a daily basis. You will not see it go down 10% or 20% any given day. In the case of stocks and like, bonds, for instance, if interest rates go up, you are going to see a mark to market. But the flip side of that is if you need cash, that's where liquidity comes from. So, as humans, we are our own worst enemies at times because we behave in ways that we know we shouldn't. When the market's down, we know that the way to make sure that we lock in the losses is selling a stock, but we cannot help ourselves. We'll go ahead and sell the stock. The beauty of private assets and real estate is that it prevents you from doing so because it's illiquid to begin with. Even if you wanted to sell, you wouldn't be. And and the mark to market happens like a couple of quarters down the line. So there's always like sometimes not being able to do things is a blessing. And that's kind of like one of those things where, uh, yeah, it can be helpful.
Yeah, and your hands are kind of tied when it's those fixed assets or these long-term assets. So you're
Exactly.
forced to keep it. Kind of like how 401k, you're forced to keep it, for so many years so that you don't take it and spend it in a unwise fashion when you're younger.
And your first house, think about it. If you have a house, you keep paying that monthly mortgage, that's forced savings, right?
Yeah.
That's like the first forced savings that comes when you kind of like enter the financial ecosystem.
Okay, Swati has a question. Swati, you want to
And
unmute and ask?
yeah, sorry, I'm in a very crowded place, but this was such an interesting talk. Thank you, Anu. And I'm going to try and just basically because I was looking at the breakdown that you had shown and the 27%. And I don't want to say the word educated, but I just wanted to understand, uh, if you can share some examples of like what does private investment really entail? I'm just trying to understand what
Okay.
what are the examples of that?
So a
I'll
private
just add one more thing, Anu, because she's written one more part to it, which is what are some examples and avenues, and are those available to non-millionaire folks as well? I'll just add that to what she said.
Okay.
Thank you, Priya.
Mhm.
Okay. So here's what I'd say. So public versus private is the big split between in investments when you start out. Public investments are regulated by state and national bodies like the SEC. Your stocks, bonds, anything that you can trade on an account, and there's an exchange for it. It's liquid. A private investment would be something like private credit. It can be land notes that Priya does. It can be, private equity. There's like a whole host of things in private investments. Can you access private investments? Yes, you can. The one thing I will say is when we think so, and this again, I'm going back to my institutional days. I was part of a company which will go unnamed, and they had a lot of money, okay? And there was like a couple $1 billion allocated to private capital. The thing is, you're not like, when a new deal comes in that's really highly subscribed, you're not the first phone call for those placing it, because there's so much money out there. So by the time it trickles down, it comes down to like mom and pop retail investors. You're not getting what's good. So in the case of privates, you have so for instance, if I tell you the returns of the S&P since like the 1900s is XYZ, it's been recreated obviously because the S&P 500, the index was started like later on. But if like one company in the S&P 500 goes bankrupt, that return still will be in the historical returns, right? The issue with private capital is, if you have a bunch, it's first self-reported. So if you have a bunch of private funds putting data into like these are what the returns are, and if one fund goes away, that data is extracted from the return numbers. So you have survivorship bias when it comes to private funds. And you've got some private funds that give fantastic returns and some that are extremely mediocre. As an investor, as a retail investor, it's really hard to know what's really great versus what's not. There are funds out there for sure that take high net worth individuals. And to be a high net worth individual, like, it's like the bar is far lower than being like an ultra high net worth individual. There are funds out there. The thing is, like I mentioned, I can't name any names because that's something I just can't do on like a public chat. But just know that, like, if you have a desire to invest in a private fund, like land notes, that is one way to do it. You can do, there are mutual funds out there that sell private credit. There are mutual funds that you can buy. Private equity is, again, you need to go through like a placement, like you need to go through one of the big brokerages like Merrill Lynch or Morgan Stanley. You need to be in their private banking group or their high net worth wealth advisory group. That's when you will get the allocation. But private credit is something that you can get. And so private credit, but the thing is, private credit has started blowing up. So be careful. I will say that because the markets are at like one of the things I'd say is that the reason I put that SORR, which is the risk that you face a huge drawdown during the first decade, people are really worried about that. Just given the fact that, like, there's a lot of debt out there, there's a lot of, like, there's like so much going on in the world that people are very nervous about market returns. And the thing is, all the markets are correlated. It's not like you can hide in one versus the other, right? And the thing is, like, cash, given inflation, it's a depreciating asset. It's such a bad thing. So there's no place to hide. So the only gift you can give yourself is diversification, because even if everything goes down at the same time, things are going to come back up in different rates. And that's what's actually, so what I'd say is, I know that I kind of went off on a tangent. You asked, are there avenues for a non-millionaire to get into this? Yes, there are. On the private credit side, you can see mutual funds. You can Google up mutual funds and you can find them. There are unregulated securities. And Priya, you want to add anything to that?
I was actually going to ask about um, angel investments and funds, right? Those are another means of getting access, but again, this it's almost opaque, I would say.
So here's what I so if you think about a venture capital fund, you need to understand the way it works. A venture capital fund might put in like 12 or 13 they might have 12 or 13 positions in a fund, okay? The expectation is that two or three are going to be extreme home runs. There's going to be a bunch of them that are going to be break even, and if it's a break even fund, break even company for a VC person, it's going to be useless. They want to write it down, and then a few of them are going to get bust. If you as an investor, you are doing seed capital, understand that professionals, when they do it, if they've got like 12 or 13, their expectation is that only two or three are going to hit it big. Okay. So like angel investing, if you have money that, again, after going through the whole thing of like, this is what I need for my fixed income, this is what I need for my equity, after doing all that, if you have like money, if it's a small seed, there's asset allocation and then there's fun in life, right? Like angel investing, it's a great way to get to meet people, right? But then know that there's incredible risk associated with it, but you're getting something else beyond just the investing. What you're getting is socialization. What you're getting is access to networks of people that you usually might not hang out with. If that is something that drives you, it's kind of like getting a career coach, right? Like sometimes making an investment is a way to get into a room where you usually might not interact with those kinds of people. So know what you're getting out of, because every investment might not be just an investment for you. It might be an avenue for you to open different doors for you. But you need to know that, and you should not be sad if it goes to zero,
Yeah,
because
it's like
it's not going
joining
to
a
go
golf
negative.
club. It's
Yeah,
like joining a golf club, right? You pay thousands of dollars per year just for the social aspect of it, which is going to probably open avenues for other things, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
I
it's
hope
also
I've
like, so I hope that answered, yeah. Yeah. And there's real estate syndicates as well, which again you have to be careful about because you don't know what's inside it. But again, I think it goes down to the socialization aspect of it to help you get to people who are on the inside to understand and know about these funds. Is that right? Yeah. And I'll also add one more thing, Swati, that sorry, what was I going to say? There are a lot of people looking for capital. So if you're looking to invest money, there's a lot of avenues to invest, especially in real estate. A lot of syndicates that are looking for funding for, especially in Austin, like to build things and the next big commercial venture and all of that. So Anu, a couple of other things I wanted to touch upon, if you still have the time, is that um, what would one be the one piece of advice that you would give someone who's getting started in investing? And I think the first thing was to just open those damn accounts. Do you have anything else that you would say?
Um, so, so, so there's like, so there's the balance sheet, like, everyone, all of us have our own balance sheets, right? We might have debt. So suppose the most important things are the simplest things to do in life. And it's kind of like, the more boring it is, the more impactful it's going to be later on in life for you. So first, open the accounts. Second, make sure that you pay down all your high interest debt. If you have credit card, like if you have debt that where the interest is like 20-25%, think about it. There's no investment that can guarantee you that amount of return. So make sure that from a debt perspective, yeah, you've got your mortgage on the house, like, your kids might have some student debt or whatever, but make sure you're on top of the debt side, because that's one where you can dig yourself into a big hole. It's and then what? And then consistently invest, like, like even if it's like $10, even if it's like $100 a month, even if it's like once a year, do something early on and start, build the habit. There are lots of studies out there, because as women, one of the things you need to think about is um, like there's a higher probability for a woman to have to take a break in their career for caregiving than a man. So when you take a break for caregiving, what happens is you kind of like step back when it comes to your career. You're not going to have that IRA, Roth, 401k contribution for the company. So in general, that sets you back financially versus someone else who might be in your similar situation. So knowing that if you can start early on and put more into retirements, it would be good. The other thing is, like I always say, don't fight about yourself. Sometimes, like, even though I try to educate my women friends on like how they need to invest, one thing I've found is when they talk about their kids, suddenly they are like really interested in investing because it's like for someone else. Okay. So the one thing I would tell is 529 accounts have really changed with President Trump's latest act. It's for much more than like, they've really broadened the purpose of 529 accounts. So if you have a 529 account, 529 accounts can never be a joint account. It has to be opened in a single person's name. So for instance, I start a 529 and then decide whom it's going to go to. You can change whom it's going to go to anytime, like you can change it next month. It doesn't matter. But the fact is, I own the account. So I'd encourage, if you're a mom, start a 529 account for your kid, because when the stock markets go up and down, you need to feel it in your body to kind of like get used to the volatility. And that will serve as your education. Because at the end of the day, like, when something drops 50%, like there's like a visceral reaction that you have in your body, which makes you do something. The lizard brain kind of like pops up and says, I need to protect myself. To prevent yourself from doing that, you need to build resilience. So if you feel better about creating an account for your kids, even if it's not ideal, I mean, something's better than nothing. So have a 529 plan, or if it's something else that you want to do for your kids, go ahead and do it. And the thing is, like I said, like, if 1 million goes to 5, goes to 3, you'll say, I lost so much money in the stock market. But if 1 million goes to 3 without it ever going up, you'll say, I made a lot of money in the stock market. So that's the human brain right there.
Yeah, 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 exactly, exactly.
So, uh,
And we have a question. Roth IRA for kids. You said a W 2 is not needed. How are those funds validated? So, Minakshi, if you want to add more to that, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I recently heard about this, and then, so that's one thing I was thinking about is like, what kind of proof do we need to provide, saying that, so basically, as I understand, it has to be a kid's earned money, right? So they, whatever job, or whatever times they have done. So, but you said that a W-2 is not needed for it. So that's why I was wondering, like, whether it's validated. Do we have to provide any proof, or how is it kind of governed?
Um, my understanding is, and I'll tell you what, I have like I did a Roth IRA for my kid, and she essentially helped. We were building a deck, and she did a bunch of work, and we paid some money for that. And that money, she said she wanted to put into. There was no documentation, like, I am paying this because yeah, there's nothing like that. I don't think it's needed. When I read on it, it said it's not needed. And like, I spoke to, I think it was like on like the Fidelity, it has to be earned income for the kid. Even if they are like, walking dogs in the neighborhood. And if they get like anything they earn money off of, that's great. They might do like, a part-time, like, I don't know, like waitressing, whatever it is. Like it might, you might get a W-9, you might not. In most cases, if it's kind of like odd jobs, you're not going to get a W-9, but it's still earned income. And my understanding is you can do it. At least I'm doing it. If you hear otherwise, let me know. So,
Sure, sure. Yeah, thanks, Anu. That's helpful. Thank
so
you. And I'm not going to quote you on that or anything.
yeah.
So, thanks.
So, what are the things you see on a day-to-day basis that really bother you as far as this is concerned, as far as investing is concerned, Anu?
Investing is concerned. Okay. Um, it's like, so I met a lady who was separated from her husband, and she was kind of like still getting an allowance from their combined account. And she did not have, she was like, yeah, we have like money, this, that, and all. And like, but just the fact that she wasn't willing to extract, like she was like, finance is too heavy for me. Like, we have split up, like, we live separately, but he's still control, like, he's still managing everything. The fact that it's, 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 it's sad. It's not frustrating. It's just sad because what you're giving up is your own sense of self, right? Like it's kind of like one of those things that should be in your control, and you would be able to make, because you shouldn't, like, others should not be able to control you in ways that that are not necessary. You need to have sovereignty over yourself. And when that's not there, it's kind of sad for me. Like, like, so for instance, like, so when I did my primary schooling in Africa, and then my mom brought us girls back to India, and my dad continued in South Africa. And after that, they managed their, finances separately. And my mom was well educated, but the thing is, and she was a risk taker. She was a big risk taker. And so, like, in the 90s, in India, there was this product called CanPep, I think, like from some bank. And the idea was like, I think it was similar to mutual fund shares, but it was like way back. And she took like 10,000 rupees out of her PF. And she said, that's a great way because PF returns are really low. And she put it in there and she lost all her money. Okay. And she like, she was like so sad about that. She was like, I should have like done something else with it, because 10,000 rupees at that time was a lot of money for her, because they had decided to separate their finances, and like, she was supporting us and all that. And so my whole thing is like, and it kind of like just goes back to being in spaces where talking about money is normal. Like, when you're in a space where you talk about like recipes or getting together for a holiday party or something for kids, those are like normal conversations. But then when you, like, the whole thing about we need to think about how we invest, it just doesn't come naturally. And maybe it's like, it's historically what we have done as women, like, it kind of like carries on. I don't know what it is. If it works in the long run for, and yeah, like, when it comes to money, people have protectors, right? Either the dad's the protector, or an uncle, or a brother, or a sister, like someone else might be a protector. What happens when that protector disappears? You're on your own, and suddenly you're scrambling and you're looking for the next thing. And it's kind of like, yeah, sometimes it never happens. Like, sometimes like the daughter or the son or whoever steps in and you're taken care of. But like, having that independence, it gives you a sense of self that I wish I could give more people. And that's something I'm doing. Oh yeah. So if you go to kind of like my Facebook page, I've got all these downloadable, like, journaling prompts. So my thing is, like, I'm not going to boil the ocean, but I'm going to go towards where people naturally gravitate to. Women love journaling. So my next thing in life is I'm going to create like journals that people can kind of like print out and then kind of like journal over time. It could be something as simple as, okay, I need to open 5 accounts in the next 1 week. And then, hooray, I did that. Let me put a sticker. I don't know. I'll figure it out. I need to get this message across. So
Is it on your Facebook page right now? Because I can bring it up,
yeah, it might be, but it's kludgy. It's like, this is something I started doing over the last, I don't know, 3-4 weeks. Yeah.
All right, yeah. Anytime like you want it, just let me know, and I can post it on our network as well. But I agree that there's like it's in our DNA somehow, the fear of talking about wealth.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd say is like last year I wrote a book, and it's on Amazon. But one
Mhm.
of the things I'll do is I have the PDF with me. It's called Navigating Financial Independence as a Woman. I'll share the PDF
Yeah,
for the team, okay? Just it's all about, what we talked of, like, what is it that you heard when you were a kid? Was it about like real estate? Was it about gold? Like what stories did you hear that formed your viewpoint about money?
yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
for example, we're also told as women to not like don't talking about money is a sin almost,
Yeah.
right? That's the narrative we come up with.
It's unladylike.
Unladylike, yeah, yeah.
It is not, yeah, it's a little crude. You don't talk about money. You can
It's
talk about all the things that you have, but not exactly about investments and returns. You can like dangle a beautiful, I don't know, $10,000 purse, which is fine. But like, okay, how do I make 10% more? That kind of like it's a little rough.